wake up. This documentary was showing how they literally are dragging atoms. You can barely see them with this huge electron microscope, dragging them and trying to get them to stick together. For reference, the human hair is 1 billion atoms thick, so that's the size of stuff they're working on. Pretty small. However, in human or living organisms, DNA does this automatically. DNA is basically the instructions how to create a living organism from simple all the way up to a human body. It instructs the specialized cellular machinery, which they can't figure out, that basically take these atoms here and there, create proteins all the way up to humans or whatever living organism. They don't understand how that works exactly, but they're attempting to do that manually, grab these atoms and try to get them to stick together, and basically trying to manually do what DNA does automatically. The more I watched or read on this subject, it brought me to one conclusion. Even with today's technology, man can't even fathom what God's created. The more scientists learn, the more complexity they find. Evolution, which might have appeared to be plausible back in the 1800s when it was proposed by Darwin, essentially they thought life was simple. They thought that maggots or flies spontaneously showed up out of rotted meat. One guy made money going around putting wheat in a damp burlap bag and put it in a corner, and he'd say a week later come back and they rolled up the ball of mice. That's how simple they thought life was back then. But essentially, the more details that are uncovered, the more they learn, especially DNA, which is unbelievable. Belief in evolution has literally become a faith-based religion. There's no plausible explanation how the instructions for life could have evolved. The information in your DNA alone would fill 100 encyclopedias. And each of your 37 trillion cells in your body has a copy of your DNA. You're feeling lethargic, like you're dragging around a bunch of encyclopedias, that's why. The DNA storage is 1 million times more space efficient than anything we have today for storing data. Yet this was somehow produced by evolution, really. I find the research fascinating not because it shows how intelligent they are, and they are, but how amazing God is. Man has discovered but a small amount of what God has created, and much of it is still beyond our grasp. As obvious as the majesty of His creation is, they refuse to acknowledge that there has to be a creator. Instead, they boast of their increasing knowledge. They're willfully blind to the obvious, and it's very obvious that there was a creator, because they don't want to accept the creator for what it entails. And it's all perfectly described in Romans 1:18 through 22. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident to them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, His eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks, but became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. That perfectly describes where we're at today. The same God they blasphemed created everything in the universe through His Word, Jesus Christ. From the stars and galaxies down to the subatomic level, including creating life from non-life, it was all accomplished through Him. John 1:1-3 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through Him, and apart from Him, nothing came into being that has come into being." Verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw His glory, the glory as of the only begotten Father, full of grace and truth. So this time of communion, it should be deeply convicting to us that the same Jesus, creator of the universe and everything in it, willingly gave up the glory of heaven to live among us. His love for us was so strong that He humbled Himself to be nailed to a cross by those of His own creation, redeeming us from our sins so we can spend eternity with Him. Lord, we're humbled by Your infinite wisdom, knowledge, and power that are evident all around us. Yet, in all Your majesty, You loved each of us so much that You sent us Your Son to redeem us through His death on the cross. as we partake of communion, let us examine our lives in light of his ultimate sacrifice. In Jesus' name. If you didn't pick up communion, just raise your hand. Good morning. I'm sure glad Seth's here because I don't think I could preach. But he is. We in the past, I've had a cardiac along with, as you know. We, in the past months, all the bridge continues. In the past months, any young people want to be a part of that? We've had surprise speakers. And we decided this is something we want everybody to know about. So we've been announcing all along that we have a special speaker. So it still has the same ring to it, but a special speaker. It's a surprise speaker today. And we've already shared with you several times that Seth Tyler is the son-in-law of Kevin and Wanda. And he was married to their daughter. Sadly, if you've read the book, several of you have, you know the story about this grief. He wrote the book, and you can still get that book. And it's something you should read. You can get it online. You can get it from Wanda. But it's a wonderful book to read. Anyway, Seth did come to us. He's also the camp manager. I don't know if I know the name of that camp.
West Central Christian Center.
It's what?
WCC.
West Central Camp.
West Central Camp.
WCC.
Okay. I didn't know that. I always just said, well, it's Shoney's camp next door. That's what I always said.
WCC.
He's a manager there and serving there. And so I'm looking forward to hearing him. I hope you are too. So Seth Tyler can share with us.
Well, I appreciate you all having me out. I'm typically a walker, and so we'll see how this works. When I walk over there, if it just fades out, just try to read my lips. We'll see. We'll see where we go from there. My name is Seth Tyler. The camp is actually West Central Christian Service Camp. It's just easier for us to say West Central Camp. Everyone forgets the WCCSC. And they add 3 C's or 4 C's, and it's just a big mess. I really am. I'm blown away by how many opportunities that I have to speak. And today is not going to be a normal what you would see sermon. I'm not a full-time minister. I manage a camp. And so I don't have to follow the same things that the full-time ministers have to. So I appreciate that too. The book is about this grief, and I'm not about to come up here and sell from the pulpit. So I know that you guys have been introduced to that book. I know Kevin wanted to have some. I do have some here. It's never been about the money for me. It was just a therapeutic thing that I did was I just wrote. And then it eventually made its way to, I'll tell a little bit about that, just to a publishing company. And here we are now with that book. But it was just therapeutic for me. It's never been about the money, and so just to prove that to you, I'm not keeping any of the proceeds from the book. We're giving that away to help the hurting. And so aside from any kind of costs, we're just going right back into the funeral homes and saying, hey, how can we help? How can we take this and help another grieving family that is struggling to lay their loved one to rest? And so if you do buy a book, know that that's where it's going. It's not going into my bank account. It's not doing anything like that. It's going right back into helping the hurting, because that's what it was for. It helped me while I was hurting, and I know that sounds strange, but it did. And so that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to use this right here. I'll get back to that part there. I'm going to start out real quick, and I will read from my book, but I will read from the Bible more, just so you know. The very first line of this book, and I'm going to tell you, I get emotional. Last 2 years, I'm just a big baby now, okay? So if a bowel break down, I'm good. I can work through it. I'm okay with that. Chapter 1, the first line, I think you see what Carol, my late wife, her heart. She said, I want to see Jesus, but I'm just not sure I'm ready to right now. It took a lot for me to understand what she meant in that moment. And if you've read the book, then you figure it out. But Carol was ready to see Jesus. She wasn't sure at that moment if that's what was happening. But there is a level of needing to be ready to go home, even when you're not ready to. I'm not sure if that makes sense. But when we're secure in the Lord, and we recognize what Jesus has done for us, then we're ready to go home. I do appreciate being able to speak at these different, the churches, the events. When you publish a book, and this is more of my testimony, by the way, but when you publish a book, it's an interesting process. Because you put everything out there, and then everyone, a part of that publishing company, you would think, oh, I love it. You would think that's what they're going to say. You would think, man, I just really love what you wrote here. Everything that you wrote was perfect. Your grammar was just on point. Your topics. But that's not how it works. You put your heart out there. You put all this time and energy into it. And everyone wants to have a say in what you get to say. And that was pretty hard. But when you also write and publish a book, they want you to have a target audience. Now, whenever I initially did this, it was just therapeutic. It was not anything for me to gain from. It was just me writing. And so by the time it came to a publishing process, I was 80% of my way through a book. What was my target audience? I didn't have one, just everyone that was hurting. However, we've narrowed that down, that the targeted audience was going to be those that were grieving, are grieving, will be grieving. So in all reality, I convinced them that it was everybody. However broad that target was, I was also realistic, though, that my main audience was probably going to be women as a whole, widows, or religious organizations, churches, ministries. However, the most speaking events that I've been to is for men. I don't know why. But I've been able to speak at multiple men's events, where it's just a gathering of men. And I started out the same way. 4 words. I cried a lot. How's that for a message? To start a message. But really, in my tears and in my crying, there was a message of hope. And it wasn't limited to one target audience. It wasn't just a target audience of women or widows and religious organizations, but it was for everybody. That message of hope is for everyone, and I'm pretty sure that that's the way that God had it set out to be. I understand that all of this and all of my life and what I've gone through and what my boys have gone through in the last 2+ years is not for me. It's so much bigger than me. But with all that said, I still had to find a way to tell my story of love, loss, and hope to any sort of gathering, churches included. So before I give the backstory, I need us to look at one verse. It's in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 26, 3 through 4. I also need to say thank you for the prayers that you guys have offered up for us, for Kevin and Wanda, for accepting them as your own, and the prayers that you've given for me and the boys. Isaiah 26, 3 through 4, shortly after Carol passed, I just realized that on our mirror in the master bathroom there's a little note card, and this verse was written out, Isaiah 26, 3 through 4, and it's been my life verse the last 2+ years. It says this: "You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever. For the Lord is the rock eternal." Man. "You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast on you." But God is our rock. God is our rock. He is a rock eternal forever. I've been given peace about a lot of things. And as I tell a little bit more of my testimony here, as I give that backstory, there wasn't a lot that I felt like I could find peace in. June 17th, 2021, and I apologize to Kevin and Wanda. I apologize to Grandma Jean, because it can be hard to hear my testimony on this part of it. June 17th, 2021, my wife Carol called me from another spot on campus. She helped also with the camp. She was cleaning one of the dorms, and I was on the other side of the property. I was mowing, and I was told that I needed to get to her. She said, "Hey, I'm struggling with some things. I need your help. You need to hurry over here right away." She was dealing with some chest pains and some dizziness. And my wife had dealt with anxiety and panic attacks all of her life. And so I thought that that's probably what it was just anxiety and a panic attack. We had just had a big storm, more camps were coming in, and I understood that. But when I got to her, she let me know that she needed to go to the hospital. That it was more serious than that. And that was unlike her. And so we made our way to the hospital. We get her to the hospital and everything. By the time that we had made it to the hospital, she had no symptoms. So she called me and her chest was tight, she was dizzy, on her way to the hospital. To be honest, I thought she was going to pass there in the car. I thought she was having a heart attack. But by the time we got to the parking lot, the ER parking lot, we were sitting there, and she said, "I don't know if I should go in," because everything had passed. Finally, we decided, okay, well, we need to make sure that we go into the hospital. We need to get you checked out. We need to make sure what was happening. And so we go in, even after contemplating not going in, after calling her parents, my parents, everyone to say, "Hey, what should we do here?" Finally, we decided that we would go in, and thus started the last 24 hours of Carol's life. Due to COVID policies at the time and hospital rules, much of those 24 hours, I wasn't able to see her. There was no riding in the ambulance. They transferred her to another hospital. There was no staying at the hospital with her that night. In fact, I had to go home the night of the 17th as she was transferred to that other hospital in Kansas City, an hour away. The next morning, we got up early, I took care of the boys, took care of the animals, and I made it up to the hospital for about an hour with her. And whenever I got there, she was already meeting with a doctor, and they wanted to run a routine ultrasound, a routine heart cath. And this particular hospital performs 900 heart caths a year. And a chance of complication is as low as 1 in 1,000. And this was at 1 in 1,000. I still don't have all the exact details of what happened. I have doctors and I have nurses' reports and I have the accounts of all of it. But exact details are missing to me, and I'll never know what happened. And I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. It was determined that Carol had SCAD, spontaneous coronary artery dissection. And that means that there are little tears on the heart, on some of the walls. Now that's not uncommon. Many women live with that. They take medicine and they live their lives out. But this was uncommon for a healthy 34-year-old female to have. And it was explained to me during this procedure that part of her, during the procedure of the heart cath, Blake's in here, so I'm just going to say that she had as low as 5% heart function after she went into cardiac arrest. There were more complications during the procedure, but it all boiled down to her being on life support after the heart cath. And by the end of it all, she had suffered multiple cardiac arrest events in a simple procedure. And if that wasn't enough, they weren't going to let me stay that night. And so they kicked me out. They said it's better that I go home, and I took the boys in bed. And so I said, okay, I'll go home, I'll take care of the boys. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to get a hotel nearby. I was sitting down with my oldest son Blake that night, telling him how Mommy's heart was sick. And that she was going to be in the hospital, that she had to be taken care of. When I received a phone call from the doctor that they had been performing CPR on her for 2 hours. In total, they continually gave life-saving procedures off and on for almost 3 hours. My heart dropped. The next hour and some odd minutes that it took to get to the hospital, I dropped the conversation with Blake. I just said, buddy, I got to go. And I put him in the care of some friends that were taking care of the camp for me. And that trip was the longest of my life. It was just a little over an hour, but it ticked by. It ticked by just the same. But it was definitely the longest hour of my life. The doctors called me multiple times. I pled with them to keep trying. But she had gone in cardiac arrest multiple times that evening as well, since I had been gone just a few hours earlier. They tried open heart surgery to see what was taking place. When I was about 15 minutes away, the doctor called and they said, I'm sorry, but we called it. My wife was no longer living. She was gone just like that. She was gone forever. There were no goodbyes, other than when I said, have fun, I'll see you later, I love you. As she was wheeled away for a routine procedure. There were all kinds of things that I wanted to say. There were all kinds of things that were left on the table to do in our lives. There were all kinds of things that we wanted to see in our lifetimes together. But that togetherness ended that night. And when the doctor told me that he had called it, I stopped speeding. In fact, I went slower. I no longer was going to encourage my wife to keep fighting for her life. But rather, I'd have to see my wife with no life in her body. There was not going to be a moment where I could help her muster up the energy and enough fight to make it through another night. There wasn't going to be a time that she was going to get better. It was over as fast as it had started. It was just going to be me weeping over my wife's body in a hospital room, separated from the outside world only by the thin ICU walls. I remember sitting next to her, holding her hand, asking God why. Why would he take her from me? Why would he take her from her boys? I remember kissing her head, and the smell of her shampoo still fills my senses now. It was unbelievable to me. We walked into the hospital the night before with no symptoms, remember? We contemplated not even going in. But that night, the very next night, I had to leave my wife in care of the hospital ward. It is safe to say that our lives changed forever. I've had to learn the single-parent life. I've had to navigate my own grief while trying to care for 3 grieving boys who were introduced to the cruelty of death far too early than any child should. I had to learn where the sheets were kept. I had to learn how to run a dishwasher and do the laundry. I had to get my boys to daycare and school. I had to keep a career going. I just simply had to make it through the day. And so, as I said a little bit ago, I cried a lot. Yet in those tears, God was still there. I've learned a lot the past 2 years. Yes, I learned how to do the keeping up at the house and the cleaning and the keeping of schedules and routines and so forth. But what I've learned internally is so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than the physical things of this world. And I hope what I've learned can challenge you in efforts to be godly men and women, to be godly husbands and godly wives, and godly fathers and mothers, and friends and mentors and leaders. Now, I'm not someone to be looked up to. Like, it blows my mind when I receive mail. I received a letter yesterday, and I cried. I tell you, I cried a lot now. But I received a letter from a gentleman who had lost his wife in March after 60 plus years of marriage. And he said, "You just have the words that I didn't have." This is so much bigger than me. God is working through so many different things, and I've had to learn them. I am not anything to look up to. I fail often. I'm humbled by it all. But I've learned these things, though, and I need to share them with you, despite how I fail often. I've learned that we are to embrace the present. Carol and I made a lot of plans for our future together. While it can be wise to do so, how much of the present are we missing out on in order to secure our future that is not promised? If I believe that God is good, if I believe that God is solid and sovereign and righteous and faithful and just and a loving God, why am I worrying about tomorrow when He has given me today to do His work? I found that when I'm embracing the now and the here and the present, that God has presented ways that I can serve Him and others more regularly than when I am only prepared to serve Him in the future. It is amazing what has happened when I gave God my now instead of just my later. What do you guys do? I've learned that we're to embrace and be present with our loved ones. I'm so thankful that we made it an effort to express our love towards each other, Carol and I, and not just the physical